The man leaned against the polished marble counter of the grand hotel lobby, his eyes darting around as he took in the opulence around him. The gold accents, the shimmering chandeliers, everything felt like a scene from a movie. But he wasn't there to enjoy the splendor, he was there on a mission. His name was James. Just a few years ago, he had been a simple clerk at a small town bookstore. Now he found himself in this luxurious hotel, a world far away from everything he once knew. Taking a deep breath to steady himself, he clenched his jaw. He needed directions to find the contact he had arranged to meet, but asking for help was never easy for him. With uncertainty creeping into his heart, he approached the front desk. A bellhop stood nearby, his uniform crisp and immaculate. James hesitated, thinking about how unfamiliar he felt in this place. But desperation won out in the end. "Excuse me," James said, his voice a little shaky. "Could you help me find?" The bellhop's voice was smooth and confident. It echoed in his head like a clap of thunder. It felt strange, disorienting. No one had called him that in a long time. He swallowed hard, nodding slowly. "Of course, sir," the bellhop replied, his smile never wavering. "Just walk down this hallway, take a left, and you'll see the elevators at the end." Once again, the bellhop's use of "sir" caught James off guard, setting off a series of memories in his mind. He remembered a time when he felt confident, when he was a part of something bigger. But life had a way of sidetracking dreams, replacing them with bills and responsibilities. As he moved toward the elevator, the echo of the bellhop's voice still rang in his ears. It made him think of the stark contrast between his past and present. In his small town, he would often be coincidentally addressed as sir by children or cashiers, but here, in the heart of the city, it held different weight. The elevator doors slid open with a soft ding. James stepped inside, clinging to the handrail like a lifeline. He felt out of place among the glamorous people who collected in the lobby, wearing tailored suits and designer clothes. The second floor felt like a barrier. He had to cross an entryway into a world he wasn't sure he belonged to. When the doors opened again, it felt like stepping into another universe. The hallway sprawled ahead, lined with plush carpets and modern art. He walked, his shoes sinking into the fabric beneath him. His heart raced and doubts swirled in his mind. He wasn't just here for a professional meeting, he was here to confront who he had become. He glanced at his watch, 10 minutes to spare. Maybe this trip would lead him somewhere new after all. He straightened his back, trying to command a little confidence. As he approached the conference room, the door swung open unexpectedly and a woman stepped out. Her smile was bright, her presence warm. "James, yes," he stammered, squinting. "Wow, it's been a while." She stepped forward and enveloped him in a quick hug before he even registered who she was. The name clicked. Rachel was a friend from his college days, the one who had moved to the city to pursue her dreams while he stayed back. It felt like a lifetime ago. She asked, her excitement palpable. "I'm actually here for a meeting," he said, his words tinged with the heaviness of his own doubts. Rachel raised her brow, looking him up and down. "You don't even look like the same person, you look different." That last part hit him harder than he expected. Was he really different? Or was it just the setting that made him feel that way? He just nodded, feeling a rush of emotions swirling within. "Come in, everyone is waiting, they're just about to start," she urged, leading him inside the conference room. As he stepped inside, the chatter quieted. People turned to look, their expressions a mix of curiosity and interest. James felt the weight of their gazes like the pressure of a storm building in the distance. Thoughts raced through his head. Who was he really? What did he have to offer? Rachel said, enthusiasm radiating from her. "He's a brilliant mind, trust me." With that introduction, James felt a soft blush creep up his neck. Could he really be seen that way? Would anyone take him seriously? He stood awkwardly at the front, waiting for someone to speak, feeling the weight of his insecurities like a blanket around him. Then a man in a sharp blue suit approached. "Glad to have you here, James." "Thanks," he mumbled, searching for confidence in a room that suddenly felt too big. The meeting started, and to his surprise, he slowly began to participate. An idea slipped out, and when people responded positively, the feeling inside him began to shift. They nodded, they smiled, and for the first time in a long while, he felt heard. He was no longer just the guy from the bookstore. He was James, with thoughts and ideas worth sharing. As the hours passed, the tension inside him began to dissolve. The bellhop's word, "sir," suddenly took on a different meaning. It was as if the man had peered into his soul and recognized potential that had been dormant for too long. It wasn't just formality, it was validation. At a break, James found Rachel again. "I can't believe I'm here," he admitted, a genuine smile creeping across his face. "Don't thank me yet," she winked playfully, nudging him. As the meeting resumed, he continued to contribute, ideas flowing like water, each time feeling lighter and more empowered. The nods of understanding, the smiles of encouragement, each one built a wall around his insecurities. Slowly, he was breaking through. At the end of the session, the head of the group approached him. "I'd love to discuss collaborating further with you on your ideas, James." He blinked, stunned into silence. "Absolutely. James shook the man's hand, the feeling of warmth spreading through him like sunlight breaking through clouds. So many emotions coursed through him: relief, joy, and even a hint of disbelief. When the meeting finally ended, Rachel pulled him aside again. "See, you did great. Yeah, I guess I did find my voice after all," he chuckled, realizing how profound that statement felt. Perhaps he hadn't just found his voice, maybe he had found a new version of himself, the one that radiated confidence. Rachel suggested, eyes sparkling with mischief, "There's a rooftop bar nearby." He felt a rush of adrenaline. He could do this. As he stepped outside with Rachel, the city air hit him like a refreshing wave. He looked up at the sky, painted with colors of orange and pink as the sun dipped low. For the first time in a long while, he felt like he belonged. The past few hours had shown him more than he expected. It was more than just a meeting or a chance encounter. It was a reminder that he was more than a man standing at a hotel counter asking for directions. He was James, a man with dreams, ideas, and the courage to chase them. When they reached the rooftop, the atmosphere buzzed with excitement. Laughter echoed and people toasted under the twinkling lights. James breathed in deep, letting the moment sink in. The city below him pulsed with life, and above all that chaos, he felt a new beginning. Rachel called out, raising her glass. James echoed, his heart swelling with newfound hope. As he glanced over to the skyline, a thought flickered in his mind. Sometimes all it takes is a few words to change how you see yourself. And sometimes it just takes the courage to ask for directions to find your way home. He stood there in the lavish hotel lobby, his heart pounding like a drum. A grand chandelier hung from the ceiling, casting sparkling light across the marble floor, illuminating the faces of people who drifted by, laughing and chatting as if they belonged there. And yet, he felt the weight of his insignificance pressing down as he fidgeted with the sleeves of his slightly wrinkled shirt. James couldn't shake the feeling that he looked out of place. Just hours ago, he was a clerk in a small-town bookstore, surrounded by dusty novels and the familiar faces of regular customers. Now he was at this upscale hotel, the kind that looked like it was pulled straight from a movie set. The reality of his mission loomed ahead, a meeting that could change everything for him. He took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of the polished wood counter beneath his fingers. Gathering his nerves, he approached the front desk. A bellhop stood nearby, immaculately dressed, a keen smile on his face. James hesitated for a moment, fighting the urge to turn and retreat back to the mundanity of his life. "Excuse me," James finally managed to stutter, his voice trembling just a little. Could you help me find?" The bellhop's voice was smooth, confident, and somehow reassuring. But it was that word, "sir," that made James momentarily freeze. It washed over him like a wave, a tidal shift in how he perceived himself. The Riverton Conference Center," he said, slowly regaining his composure. "Of course, sir," the bellhop replied, his demeanor perfectly polite and attentive. He offered directions with the practiced ease of someone who had repeated them countless times. But each time he said "sir," it resonated deeper within James, stirring something he thought had long been buried beneath layers of self-doubt. Yes, he was a sir. It felt strange, yet oddly empowering. James took a step back, letting the bellhop's words roll over him. Surely this place and this moment were a reflection of who he could become. "Just go down this hallway, take a left, and the elevators will be right there. Press the button for the second floor," the bellhop added, his eyes bright and knowing. James nodded, trying to absorb both the directions and the unexpected surge of confidence. As he walked toward the elevators, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was crossing an invisible boundary, that the word "sir" had transformed him into someone worth listening to, even if just for a fleeting moment. Stepping into the elevator, he clutched the handrail tightly, feeling the adrenaline rush through him like electricity. The doors slid shut with a soft chime, isolating him in a small space where reflections stared back. His thoughts raced, and he caught himself fidgeting with his hair. Was he prepared for this? A meeting with people who seemed so much more qualified than him. The elevator dinged at the second floor, and the doors parted to reveal a long corridor lined with plush carpets and ornate artwork. He stepped out, the ground beneath him feeling somehow more stable and unwavering. As he walked toward the conference room, doubts crept back in. What if he faltered? What if they called him out as unqualified? But he couldn't turn back now. He didn't want to live in the shadow of his own insecurities anymore. As he approached the conference room, the door swung open unexpectedly, revealing a bustling crowd. A familiar face emerged from the sea of strangers: Rachel, his college friend, James. She stepped outside with arms wide open, catching him off guard as she pulled him into a quick hug. "Oh wow," he laughed, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. "It's been ages." Her eyes sparkled with enthusiasm. "Come in," he replied, feeling emboldened. Rachel had always believed in him, a small flicker of support that rekindled long-hidden hopes. As he stepped inside, conversation halted momentarily and heads turned in his direction. James felt the scrutiny like a spotlight burning brightly. Familiarity washed over him, and yet it felt foreign. His throat was dry and beads of sweat began to form at his brow. Rachel announced, her voice warm and inviting. "He's brilliant, brilliant." The word hung in the air like a heavy chandelier, intensifying the weight of expectation. Could he pull this off? To his surprise, a round of polite applause erupted, pulling him from his swirling thoughts. Each clap echoed their recognition, their encouragement, and for the first time in a long while he began to breathe a little easier. The meeting commenced, and as discussions bounced around the table, James found himself drawn in, his voice steadying with each contribution. Ideas flowed as he spoke, a thought for an innovative approach here, a suggestion for improvement there. The energy in the room shifted, encircling him like a warm embrace, almost as if they welcomed him as their own. "Great idea, James," someone said, nodding with enthusiasm. With every nod, every smile, new layers peeled away from his self-doubt. In that setting, he wasn't just a small-town clerk, he was a valuable voice, and here he was making his mark. As the meeting progressed, he shared anecdotes of his experiences, contextualizing his thoughts against the backdrop of what he knew. A small smile crept onto his face as he noticed the way others leaned in during his stories. Connection began to emerge, people asking questions, engaging in discussions, laughing together. This was the magic of collaboration, and he finally felt part of it. But then, just as doubts began to fade, the head of the table, a senior executive with sharp eyes and endless charisma, turned to James. "I've got to say, your insights are impressive, James." James's heart stopped. He blurted out, surprised, "Absolutely. Let's talk about collaborating further," the executive said, extending a hand. In that moment, James couldn't believe what he was hearing. His thoughts collided in a whirlwind of disbelief, joy, and exhilaration. They wanted to work with him. It didn't feel real. It felt like he was in a dream, standing before a version of himself he had only ever fantasized about becoming. Once the meeting wrapped up, he felt the tension dissolve into a flurry of casual conversations and laughter. The atmosphere was electric, punctuated only by the sounds of clinking glasses and friendly banter. Rachel found him again, her eyes dancing with excitement. "You killed it. Thanks, Rachel," he said, feeling the swell of gratitude bubbling inside. "I didn't think I could, but you did," she laughed, her enthusiasm contagious. As the crowd began to disperse for the evening, Rachel perked up. "Want to celebrate?" He hesitated for just a moment. What if he didn't fit in at the bar? What if he couldn't be that guy? Maybe he could be that guy after all, he declared, feeling the excitement rush through him, pushing him out of his comfort zone. As they made their way to the rooftop, the city lights sparkled like a sea of stars laid out beneath them. James inhaled the fresh air, letting it fill his lungs and cleanse away the lingering doubt. He looked up at the vast expanse of the sky and realized new possibilities lay ahead. When they reached the rooftop, the atmosphere shifted to one of joyous celebration. Laughter echoed as friends clinked glasses and music danced in the background. Lights twinkled like fireflies, each flicker reminding him that he was indeed a part of it all. Rachel called, raising her glass high. James joined in, his heart swelling with an unfamiliar sense of belonging. He echoed, and as he held the glass, he felt transformed in ways he never anticipated. Amidst the laughter and chatter, he found himself fully engaged, sharing stories with others, his voice weaving effortlessly into the fabric of the gathering. People leaned in, captivated by his ideas, encouraged by his newfound confidence. Gradually, the self-consciousness faded into the background as if it never existed. At one point, James spotted the bellhop from earlier, standing at the bar, quietly attending to patrons. Suddenly, memories of that initial moment surfaced, a moment that had sparked something inside him. With newfound courage, he made his way over. "Hey, I just wanted to thank you for your help earlier," James began, his voice steady. The bellhop looked surprised, his smile brightening even further. "Really, I'm glad to hear that. You're right," James agreed. And in that simple exchange, James understood what it meant to grow. As he turned back to the celebration around him, the warmth of connection enveloped him once more. For the first time in ages, he felt the thrill of possibility buzz within him. "Sir," he could almost hear the bellhop's voice echoing in his mind. It wasn't just a title, it was an acknowledgement of his worth. And with that renewed sense of self, James stepped forward into whatever lay ahead, ready to embrace it all. He stood in the grand hotel lobby, feeling like a fish out of water. Marble floors gleamed under the light of extravagant chandeliers, and laughter echoed from groups of well-dressed people mingling effortlessly. James shifted his weight, adjusting his collar, listening to the sound of his own rapid heartbeat. He was here for a reason, but each passing moment only deepened his sense of inadequacy. Feeling small amid the luxury, he took a deep breath, willing himself to move forward. Just hours before, he had been at his mundane job in a small-town bookstore. Now he found himself in this opulent setting, about to confront his dreams that felt as distant as the stars above. That morning, he had vowed to himself that today would be different. He wished for change, but could he really seize the opportunity before him? James approached the front desk, where an impeccably dressed bellhop stood, waiting with an easy smile. Bright gold buttons gleamed on the fabric of his tailored uniform. For a moment, James hesitated. Would this man even want to help him? But the urgency tugged at him, and he stepped forward. "Excuse me," he stammered, surprising himself with how shaky his voice sounded amid the bustling atmosphere. Could you help me find, Of course, sir, the bellhop replied smoothly, his voice crisp and confident. The words, sir, struck James like a bolt of lightning, sending a jolt of warmth through him. He had not expected such respect. It felt strange and wonderful, like a key turning in a locked door. Just walk down this hallway, take a left, and the elevators will be at the end, the bellhop continued, maintaining his polished demeanor. Press the button for the second floor. Thank you, James murmured, the gratitude almost choking him. As he turned and walked away, that simple word rattled in his mind. Could it be that he was worthy of such respect? The bellhop's voice echoed, a reminder that perhaps he was more than what he felt inside. Stepping into the elevator, James wrapped his fingers around the cold metal railings, grounding himself in this new reality. With every floor that passed, he felt a mix of excitement and dread. What if they saw through him? What if they realized he was just a clerk from a bookstore with nothing significant to contribute? As the elevator dinged at the second floor, he pushed the thought aside and stepped out into a long corridor, meticulously decorated with modern art and plush carpets. As he walked toward the conference room, he felt himself transforming, shedding layers of doubt. This was a crossroads. Who would he choose to be? He rounded the corner and the door to the conference room opened. A wave of human energy rushed out, laughter mixing with the sound of conversation. A familiar face emerged from the crowd. Rachel, a friend from his college days. Her eyes lit up when she spotted him. James, she exclaimed, rushing up to him and giving him a quick hug. It felt comforting and grounding, pulling him back to a place where he belonged. It's great to see you, Rachel, he replied, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. She said, beaming, come on in. As he stepped into the bright room, faces turned toward him. Conversations dipped, curious glances met his. It was an overwhelming but strangely invigorating sensation. Everyone, this is James, Rachel announced. He's brilliant, brilliant. The word hit him like a wave crashing against a rock. Hadn't he spent years doubting himself? A round of polite applause broke out, and James felt warmth creeping up his neck. For the first time, he felt seen. Perhaps Rachel wasn't wrong, after all. As the meeting started, he sat at the long table, his heart racing as he listened to the ideas that flowed around him. He struggled to calm his nerves, feeling small in a sea of accomplished professionals. But when Rachel passed him a note with a smile that read, "You got this," something flickered inside him, a tiny spark of courage. Suddenly a question arose that made him sit up. It took a moment, a quiet tugging at his mind before he found his voice. The words tumbled out, hesitantly at first, but then gained confidence as others turned to listen. As he spoke, something remarkable happened. The attention shifted, they leaned in closer. Suddenly he wasn't just a background character, he was contributing, engaging. Ideas bloomed around him like flowers responding to sunlight. The energy shifted, and with every nod of understanding, his confidence grew. Someone called out, and that single acknowledgement set his heart racing, but this time with exhilaration instead of fear. He was participating, part of a team, and they valued what he had to say. It felt liberating. As the meeting progressed, James shared more of his thoughts. Each idea met with genuine interest. They were listening, eager to collaborate. Each moment buoyed him higher, and the weight he had carried slipped away like a distant memory. The tension began to fade, replaced by a sense of belonging. Then, during a brief break, the head of the meeting, a senior executive with an assertive presence, approached him. "James, that was a fantastic insight you shared," he said, extending a hand. "I'd love to discuss your ideas further." James blinked, stunned into silence. Did he just hear that right? They wanted to work with him. Joy surged within him, a rush of clarity that lit up every shadow of self-doubt. In that moment, he transformed from the insecure clerk into a potential collaborator, a valuable contributor. Returning to the table, Rachel caught his eye, her expression one of pure enthusiasm. "I'm so proud of you, C." "I can't believe it," he admitted, still riding the wave of exhilaration. As the meeting drew to a close, James's heart swelled with a new sense of purpose. The room felt alive with energy, and he had been part of something significant. Rachel guided him back into the main area where the atmosphere had shifted to one of celebration. Laughter and conversation flowed, creating an electric ambience he hadn't expected. Rachel suggested, her eyes sparkling with excitement. He hesitated, the thought of joining a crowd of seemingly glamorous strangers nudging at his anxiety. He asked, doubt creeping back. "Of course, you're one of us now," she assured him, her confidence infectious. He replied, feeling the urge to embrace this new chapter of his life. As they walked toward the rooftop, the sunset painted the sky in vibrant shades of orange and purple. James soaked it all in, feeling alive in a way he hadn't felt in years. The city below shimmered, and at that moment anything seemed possible. When they reached the rooftop, the atmosphere was electric. People mingled, drinks clinked, laughter filled the night air, and music danced through the crowd. Everything sparkled with life, and James felt himself stepping into this new reality. Rachel called, lifting her glass high. James joined in, his heart racing with anticipation as he raised his own drink. He echoed, feeling the warmth of camaraderie building around him. As the night wore on, conversations flowed effortlessly. People leaned in to hear his ideas, asking questions, sharing their own stories. He realized how simple it was to connect with others, how shared experiences could break down barriers. Gone were the walls of self-doubt, he could express himself freely. In the midst of this whirlwind, he spotted the bellhop again, quietly attending to customers. Remembering the impact of that one kind word, he couldn't let this moment pass. James approached him, feeling a surge of gratitude. "Hey, I wanted to thank you for your help earlier today," he said, his voice steady. The bellhop shifted, surprise cutting across his features before a smile broke through. "Really, I'm glad to hear that." "Absolutely," James replied, a wave of appreciation washing over him. At that moment, he could feel the resonance of their exchange, two individuals connected by a simple yet profound moment of recognition. As he turned back to the celebration around him, James felt the energy carrying him forward. He wasn't simply a man who entered a hotel lobby anymore. He was a tapestry of experiences, dreams, and newfound confidence woven into a community of inspiring individuals. In the cocoon of laughter, the radiance of the city lights, and the spirits of the people gathered around him, he understood that he had embarked on a journey. It wasn't merely about directions to a conference center. It was a map to discover who he really was. With every laugh shared, every story told, James embraced this new chapter. Life was no longer a collection of missed opportunities. It was a canvas of possibilities waiting to be painted. And as the night slipped away, he reveled in the truth that had bloomed within him. He was worthy, he belonged, and that simple word Sir had not just changed his day. It had awakened him to a life bursting with purpose. He stood in the Grand Hotel lobby, feeling a wave of self-doubt wash over him. The marble floors gleamed under the opulent chandeliers, reflecting the laughter and chatter of elegantly dressed guests. James felt small, a mere speck in a world designed for the glitterati. He clutched the strap of his worn leather messenger bag, a reminder of the small-town bookstore he had left behind for this moment. Arriving at the city for a crucial meeting, he knew that this was his opportunity. It was supposed to be a career-defining moment, a chance to prove himself. But under the pressure of such high expectations, his stomach churned. What if he didn't belong here? What if he stepped into that conference room and couldn't say a single word? Taking a deep breath, gathering all the courage he could muster, he approached the front desk. A sleek bellhop dressed in a sharp uniform stood attentively with an inviting smile. For a brief moment, James hesitated, debating if he should turn and walk away, but that little voice inside him urged him on. He was here for a reason. "Excuse me," he stammered, his voice wavering slightly. "Could you help me find?" The bellhop replied smoothly, a sparkle in his eye. The word hit James like an unexpected jolt. "Sir." He hadn't been called that in ages, and it stirred something deep inside him. A sense of recognition, a flicker of worth. James blinked, momentarily thrown off balance. Yes, of course, sir," the bellhop continued, his voice steady and reassuring. He nodded, his smile warm and encouraging. "Thank you so much," James replied, feeling the tension in his shoulders ease just a little. As he walked away, he couldn't help but replay the bellhop's words in his mind. "Sir." That simple title felt heavy with meaning, as if it carried a power that could lift him above the weight of self-doubt pressing down on him. He stepped into the elevator, closing the door behind him. The moment the elevator started to ascend, he felt the familiar knot of anxiety tighten once more. What if he embarrassed himself? What if they didn't take him seriously? Each passing floor felt like an eternity. The elevator dinged, and the doors slid open with a soft click. James stepped out into a long, impeccably decorated corridor. Art adorned the walls and the plush carpet cushioned his steps, but all that beauty did little to calm his racing heart. As he walked toward the conference room, he felt like a man teetering on the edge of a great unknown. Before he reached the door, he caught a glimpse of himself in the brass-framed mirror hanging in the hallway. The reflection of a weary face stared back, nervous, unsure. What was he doing here? The questions swirled in his head, battling against that flickering spark of confidence ignited by the kind bellhop. But there was no turning back. He had already come too far. He positioned himself in front of the conference room door, inhaled deeply, and pushed it open. The room was alive with conversation, laughter bouncing off the walls. He felt the collective gaze of strangers, and for a moment, panic surged. Was he just a small-town clerk pretending to be something he wasn't? However, his doubts were interrupted by a bright voice. James, Rachel, his old college friend, rushed over, her eyes wide with excitement. A wave of relief washed over him at her warm demeanor. "Rachel," he replied, his smile genuine. She was beaming. "Come on in." As he stepped inside, the atmosphere spiraled around him, a blend of curiosity and anticipation. Rachel presented him to the group, her voice ringing out with enthusiasm. "Everyone, this is James." His heart raced, but this time not with fear. By the way Rachel introduced him, she believed in his potential. The recognition felt motivating, and as the group began to applaud, a spark ignited within him, heating his resolve. He noticed the head of the meeting, a charismatic executive with sharp features and keen eyes, rising to speak. "We're excited to have James here today." As attention shifted toward him, he felt himself beginning to thaw out of his shell. He was no longer just a nameless figure, he was someone worth listening to. The discussion started and James listened intently, soaking in the ideas being tossed around the table. He felt the tension tightening in his chest, a flicker of fear creeping back. What if he couldn't contribute anything worthwhile? What if they laughed at him? He glanced at Rachel, who offered him an encouraging smile. She believed in him, and perhaps it was time for him to believe in himself. When the conversation turned to a particularly challenging issue, the room fell silent. A moment of hesitation hung in the air before James felt an unexpected push within him. He cleared his throat. What if we approached this dilemma from a different angle? The words spilled out, and to his surprise, the room erupted into thoughtful murmurs. Eyes widened with interest, people leaned in closer. James could barely believe it. Someone chimed in, and he could feel the energy shift, pulling him into the current of discussion. With every nod, every appreciative glance, his confidence bloomed. It was intoxicating. As the meeting continued, the conversation intensified, and James found himself entirely immersed, offering insights, sharing anecdotes, each idea welcomed and explored. It was exhilarating, a dance of intellect and creativity, and for the first time, he didn't feel like an imposter. He could feel the spark igniting into a flame, pulling him closer to the person he aspired to be. Then the head of the meeting turned to him. James, I must say your input today has been invaluable. How do you feel about joining our project team? His heart skipped a beat. James murmured, astonished. The words echoed through him, stirring waves of disbelief and joy. Absolutely, the executive affirmed, extending a hand. James shook his hand, a surge of adrenaline coursing through him. When the meeting wrapped up, excitement crackled in the air as Rachel pulled him aside, her smile brighter than ever. See, you did it. I can't believe they want to work with me, he confessed, all mixing with amusement. They see what I see, James, she said firmly. You've got an incredible mind. As the discussions eased into laughter, James felt the tension dissolve further. He was lighter, more alive. The hard walls built by years of self-doubt were crumbling, replaced with the warmth of genuine connection and respect. Suddenly, a voice cut through the celebration. Rachel nudged him playfully. How about we hit the rooftop bar? James hesitated. Crowded bars had always made him anxious. Definitely, she said, her enthusiasm infectious. He decided, his excitement outweighing his fears. As they made their way to the rooftop, city lights shimmered below them like a sea of stars reflected on glass. The vibrant colors painted the sky as the sun slipped below the horizon. It was beautiful, and at that moment James felt a rush of possibility envelop him. When they reached the rooftop, the atmosphere was electric. Laughter and music wound through the crowd, and people mingled with a casual familiarity he found inviting. The laughter rang like music, buoying him through the throng of excited voices. Rachel called, her glass raised high. James lifted his own drink, the energy pulsing around them, and echoed her. The night unfolded like a celebration of life itself, and James found himself swept up in the camaraderie. Stories were shared, laughter echoed, and for the first time he didn't feel like an outsider looking in. He was part of something larger, a fabric woven from shared dreams and aspirations. Amidst the chatter, he glimpsed the bellhop standing off to the side, observing the festivities. Remembering the way that one word had shifted everything for him, James felt compelled to thank him again. He approached, a genuine smile lighting up his face. Hi there, the bellhop met his gaze, surprise flickering across his face. Really, that's great to hear. You were absolutely right, James replied, gratitude surfacing anew. And in that brief moment, they shared an understanding, a connection formed through a few simple words. As James returned to the vibrant crowd, he felt a weight lift, a clear sense of purpose igniting in him. No longer was he just a store clerk or a person wandering through life. He was James, the man who had faced his fears, grabbed hold of opportunities, and stepped into a new identity. He felt no longer like a bystander, but a participant in his own story. As night draped over the city, James realized something profound. Sometimes it takes just one word, one moment of recognition to spark a transformation. From a simple sir to an acknowledgement of worth, he had opened a door to a life filled with possibility. In the company of friends and fleeting glances of strangers, each with their own battles and triumphs, he embraced this newfound journey. It was not just about directions to a conference center. It was about discovering the path to who he was meant to be. As laughter and stories intertwined in the cool night air, James finally understood he was worthy of respect, of love, and most importantly, of believing in himself. And standing on that rooftop, surrounded by the glow of the city, he felt the power of transformation surge within him, ready to carry him into whatever came next. He stepped into the grand hotel lobby, and the world around him shifted. Air hummed with energy, loaded with the scent of freshly polished marble and subtle hints of expensive cologne. A massive chandelier sparkled overhead, casting flickering light across elegantly dressed guests who laughed and chatted effortlessly. James felt like a ghost in a vibrant painting, invisible and alone among the living. This was it, his chance to step into something different, to prove he belonged if only he could find the guts to approach the front desk. With every step, a battle raged inside him. What would they think of someone like him, a small-town clerk in a big city? A man on a mission, but where did he fit in here? Gathering his resolve, he strode across the lobby, feeling every eye upon him, even though he knew deep down they were too immersed in their own conversations to notice. He reached the front desk, where a tall bellhop stood, his uniform impeccably pressed, a bright smile effortlessly plastered on his face. "Excuse me," James stammered, his heart racing. The bellhop's voice was smooth like polished glass, and the word "sir" sent an unexpected chill down James's spine. It reverberated in his mind, wrapping him in an unfamiliar warmth. "Sir." It felt almost surreal, as if that one word could unlock doors he had never even imagined existed. Yes, the Riverton Conference Center," James managed to respond, swallowing hard. "Certainly, sir. Just head down this hallway, take a left, and the elevators will be right there." "Press the button for the second floor," the bellhop said, his demeanor confident. "Thank you," James replied, a mix of gratitude and disbelief flooding through him. As he walked away, the bellhop's words hung in the air, stirring something deep within. "Sir," there was power in that simple term. It felt like a subtle acknowledgement, an invitation to reclaim a part of himself he had lost. He stepped into the elevator, the metallic doors closing with a soft thud. In the solitude of the small space, his mind raced. What if he wasn't enough? What if the people in the conference room saw through the facade he had built around himself? Trembling with anticipation, he inhaled deeply, willing himself to feel grounded. Ding! The elevator door slid open, revealing a long, plush-carpeted hallway. Art hung on the walls, vibrant splashes of color in stark contrast to the mundane life he had left behind. With each step, he willed away the doubts swirling in his mind. Striding purposefully toward the conference room, he caught a glimpse of himself in a brass-framed mirror. He barely recognized the man staring back. Was he really here? As he approached the conference room door, it swung open to reveal a gathering of eager, engaged faces. Laughter and conversation spilled out, an undeserved invitation into an unfamiliar world. "James," a familiar voice cut through the noise. It was Rachel, a friend from college, her face lighting up with excitement. Relief washed over him like a wave. "Rachel," he exclaimed, a genuine smile breaking through his initial anxiety. "Come on in," she said, her enthusiasm bubbling over as she ushered him into the room. As he stepped inside, the laughter died down a bit, heads turning toward him. The warmth of acknowledgement wrapped around him, buoying his spirits. "Everyone, this is James." Rachel's voice rang out, infusing him with a confidence he didn't fully feel. Applause broke out, and his heart raced once more. Was this really happening? He felt a surge of anxiety, blending with excitement, and knew this was his moment to shine. The head of the meeting, a sharp-dressed executive with an engaging presence, turned his attention toward James. "We're thrilled to have you here, James." James cleared his throat. "Thank you," he managed, taking a moment to glance at Rachel. She smiled at him, her eyes sparkling with encouragement. With renewed determination, he spoke up. The ideas flowed more freely than he expected, each thought building on the last, like constructing a bridge over a chasm of doubt. As he spoke, he noticed the room leaning in, eyes focused and nodding. The tension within him began to dissipate, replaced by an exhilarating rush. They were listening. They wanted to hear what he had to say. The meeting became a vibrant exchange, with ideas bouncing from one person to the next. James couldn't believe the warmth enveloping him, the feeling that he was truly a part of something significant for the first time in his life. The opinions he shared, once tentative, transformed into a strong voice, his voice. More analytics would be helpful, someone suggested. James jumped in, thrilled at being part of the conversation. The meeting felt alive, charged with creativity and collaboration. As he shared his points, every nod and smile fueled his confidence, lifting him higher. This was what he had yearned for, a place where ideas mattered. Just as a sense of clarity washed over him, the head of the meeting turned back to him, the twinkle in his eye unmistakable. "James, I think you would be a great fit for our team." The question struck him like a bolt of lightning. The word escaped his lips before he could catch it. His mind raced. Was this truly happening? "Absolutely, we could use someone with your perspective," the executive said, extending a hand. In that moment, a wave of validation washed over James. He grasped the executive's hand, feeling the warm rush of opportunity. The world around him shifted again. No longer was he the small-town clerk. He was a man with a place, a seat at the table. As the meeting wrapped up, excitement electrified the air. James was still absorbing the whirlwind of emotions when Rachel found him again, her joy radiating like sunshine. "You did it." "I can't believe they want to work with me," he breathed, disbelief mingled with elation. "Of course they do, you've always had it in you," she encouraged, her faith in him solidifying his own. The atmosphere shifted to one of celebration as people began to mingle. Laughter erupted, drinks were poured, and James realized he belonged here more than he had ever dreamed. He felt lighter, years of insecurity were falling away, one joyful moment at a time. "James." A voice called from the group, pulling him from his thoughts. He made his way over, a sense of camaraderie wrapping around him like a warm blanket. Rachel said, raising her glass. James echoed, lifting his own drink with newfound confidence. The sound of clinking glasses filled the air, a chorus of hopes and dreams colliding in that shared space. As the night progressed, conversations flowed seamlessly. Stories were exchanged, laughter filled the gaps, and with each new connection, James felt himself standing taller. It was as if he had shed the armor of self-doubt he had been carrying for years. Then he spotted the bellhop, the man who had first lifted the weight off his shoulders with a single respectful word. He stood to the side, watching the festivities. Remembering the power of that moment, James felt compelled to say thank you. Making his way across the room, he approached the bellhop, who seemed pleasantly surprised to see him. "Hey, I wanted to thank you for your help today," James said, a sincere smile spreading across his face. The bellhop nodded, his own smile widening. "I'm glad to hear that. A little respect can lift someone's spirits." "Absolutely," James replied, the sentiment resonating deeply within him. Their shared smile felt like an unspoken bond, a connection forged through understanding. James returned to the vibrant party, wrapped once more in the embrace of new friendships and untapped potential. He marveled at how life could shift so quickly, how a simple act of kindness could echo through someone's soul. As laughter boomed around him and music thrummed in the background, he finally understood the journey he was on. It wasn't merely about asking for directions or arriving at a meeting. It was about discovering a voice that had been waiting for its moment in the spotlight. Under shimmering lights and the glow of city streets below, James reflected on the transformation taking place within him. He realized how powerful it was to feel seen and valued. That fleeting moment of recognition had awakened a part of him long thought dormant. He had arrived, yes, but more than that, he had stepped into who he was meant to be. With every laugh shared and every connection made, James felt himself growing stronger, ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. And standing there, surrounded by the hum of life, he knew one thing for certain. He was no longer just a name on a name tag. He was James, an agent of change, proud of every step that had led him to this moment. He stood in the hotel lobby, feeling the weight of the world pressing against his chest. The opulent surroundings felt like a movie set, far removed from the small town he called home. Crystal chandeliers hung overhead, casting prisms of light that mixed with the chatter of well-dressed guests buzzing around him. James fought the impulse to turn and run. This was a place for the successful, the affluent people who glided through life like they belonged. But today was different. Today he was on a mission. He had an important meeting that could change the trajectory of his career, a chance to step out of his role as a small-town bookstore clerk and into something larger, something significant. Yet standing there uncertain and surrounded by so much luxury, he felt like an imposter. He forced himself to take a deep breath and stepped up to the front desk. A striking bellhop stood nearby, his uniform neatly pressed, a polite smile resting on his face. James hesitated. Should he really ask for help, or was that too much? But the meeting wasn't going to wait for him to gather his courage. "Excuse me," James began, his voice wavering. The bellhop's voice was smooth, authoritative, yet somehow welcoming. That word, "sir," hit James like a shockwave. He hadn't heard anyone address him like that in years. It felt almost surreal, as if the bellhop could see a part of him that he had buried deep under layers of doubt. "Yes, the Riverton Conference Center," he managed to say, stunned by the lift in his spirits. "Of course, sir," the bellhop replied without missing a beat. "Just head down this hallway, take a left, and the elevators will be at the end." James felt a strange warmth spread through him. "Thank you," he stammered, his heart racing as he walked away. That simple word, "sir," echoed in his mind. It was as if the bellhop had granted him permission to step into a new version of himself, one that was worthy of respect, even in this glittering world. He stepped into the elevator, grateful to find himself alone for a moment. The metallic doors slid shut, sealing him within the stillness. For several floors, the elevator carried him upward, but it felt more like a tug-of-war within himself. What if he made a fool of himself? What if they didn't take him seriously? The sweet taste of opportunity was overshadowed by the bitter pangs of self-doubt. Ding. The elevator door slid open to reveal a long corridor, each step one closer to the unknown. Walls adorned with modern art and plush carpet underfoot did little to calm the storm inside him. He moved toward the conference room, feeling more exposed with every stride. He wondered if everyone else in the room was more prepared, more qualified, more everything than he was. As he approached the door, it swung open unexpectedly, revealing voices and laughter bubbling out. Rachel, a friend from college, stood there, her eyes bright with excitement. "James," she cried, rushing toward him and pulling him into a brief but warm hug. "Rachel," he said, surprise breaking through his nervous facade. "I'm here to support you," she urged, pulling him into the room. As he stepped inside, the noise began to quiet down and a circle of curious faces turned to him. Laughter faded into polite smiles, a sea of expressions that ranged from warm to inquisitive. James felt the weight of their attention and his heart thudded heavily in his chest. "Everyone, this is James," Rachel announced, her cheer resonating in the room. James felt heat rush up his face at the spotlight suddenly cast on him. Incredible ideas, who was he kidding? But before he could retreat into his insecurities, the group erupted into applause. It was unexpected, overwhelming, and somehow invigorating. The meeting began and the energy shifted to focus on the discussion. James felt like a passenger on a runaway train, struggling to catch the rhythm of the conversation. They tossed around theories and prospects, ideas blooming like wildflowers in spring. With every passing moment, the urge to contribute swelled within him, yet the fear of failure dug its claws into his confidence. Why did he ever think he could step into this world? Perhaps he was meant to stay behind the counter of his cozy bookstore, surrounded by familiar shelves and understood faces. But then Rachel caught his eye, her encouraging smile breaking through the fog of self-doubt. That tiny spark ignited something within him, a flicker of courage he hadn't felt in a long time. Just as he was about to open his mouth, a question hung in the air, drawing him in. Someone prompted, turning all attention toward him. The room fell silent, and in that stillness, James felt the gears of his mind begin to turn. What if he could offer something worthwhile? With a deep breath, he gathered the fragments of bravery swirling inside him. I think we should explore new market trends rather than just cut costs. There's untapped potential that could bring growth, he said, the words spilling out, flowing with more confidence than he had anticipated. Hands that had been idle suddenly started nodding. Excited murmurs floated around him, and he felt the atmosphere shift. Ideas clicked together like pieces of a puzzle. Before he knew it, he was no longer hesitating. He was participating, actively engaging with his peers. Each exchange fueled him. Another voice chimed in, and James felt the excited energy reverberate. Let's dive deeper into that. And in that moment, the walls he had built around himself started to crumble. He shared more of his thoughts, weaving in personal stories and ideas. It was exhilarating to see their interest, the way they leaned in closer, inviting him into the conversation. As the meeting progressed, he no longer felt like an outsider looking in. He was part of the team, contributing his voice and ideas. Each nod, every smile felt like a building block erecting a fortress of confidence around him. This was it, the connection he had longed for, the moment he had dreamt of while flipping through the pages of his books back in that small-town bookstore. Just when he believed he had touched the clouds, the head of the meeting turned to him again, a sparkle in his eye. James, your insights have been incredible. His heart soared, disbelief hanging heavy in the air. He stammered, astonished. Absolutely, we would love to have your perspective, the executive replied, extending a hand. He grasped the man's hand firmly, spirit surging within him. He felt alive, like a fire had ignited inside him. He wasn't just a small clerk anymore, he was James, a professional with ideas worth pursuing. The meeting wrapped up, and excitement permeated the air. Others began to mingle. Rachel approached him with a beaming smile. You did it, he exclaimed, the joy palpable. You've always had it in you, she said, taking his arm. Everyone moved into the main area where the atmosphere transformed into one of celebration. Laughter bounced off the walls, clinking glasses filled the air, and the waves of camaraderie washed over him like a warm blanket. James felt lighter now, years of doubt melting away piece by piece. Rachel suggested, pulling him toward the bar. Absolutely, he agreed. As they navigated through the crowd, the excitement of the evening caught him like a fever. When they reached the bar, James scanned the vibrant scene around them. People conversed with animated gestures, laughter erupted from every corner, and a sense of belonging settled gently in his chest. Rachel called out, raising her glass high. James echoed, lifting his drink with purpose. The sound of clinking glasses rang out like a distant melody, an affirmation of the connections he had forged tonight. As the night unfolded, James felt alive, weaving through the crowd, engaging in conversations, sharing laughs. It was almost surreal. He had transformed from an anxious outsider to an integral part of this gathering. In the midst of this whirlwind, he spotted the bellhop again, standing just off to the side, patiently observing the party. Remembering how that one moment had changed everything for him, James felt a surge of gratitude swell inside. He made his way over. Hey, I wanted to thank you for what you said earlier, James began, a sincere smile lighting his face. The bellhop smiled, surprise flickering across his features. Really, I'm glad to hear that. Absolutely. You have no idea how much it meant to me, James replied, feeling a connection taking shape, a simple yet profound bond over shared understanding. Walking back into the fray of celebration, James felt renewed. Surrounded by friends, laughter, and a newfound sense of belonging, he realized the night had become more than just a meeting. It was a moment of transformation, a story of breaking free. As his laughter mingled with others and the energy swirled around him, it struck him. It was not only about asking for directions, it was about navigating through life itself. And sometimes it took just one kind word to unlock the door to a new beginning. Standing on that rooftop under the expanse of a star-speckled sky, James finally understood that he was worthy of every opportunity that came his way. The journey had just begun, and he was ready to embrace every moment, every leap, and every chance to grow. In the brilliance of illuminated city streets below, he was no longer just a clerk. He was James, a man unafraid to own his story, and the world awaited him. He stood in the ornate hotel lobby, his heart racing as he took in his surroundings. The gleam of polished marble floor, the extravagant chandeliers dripping with crystals, and the hum of well-dressed guests laughing and mingling created a dizzying sense of grandeur. James felt like a child lost in a candy store, struck by both wonder and insecurity. He had left his small-town bookstore behind that morning, and now, standing in a place designed for the affluent and accomplished, he felt out of place, a fleeting shadow among brilliant lights. Today was supposed to be a turning point, a chance to prove he was more than just a clerk. There was a networking meeting he had been invited to attend, a doorway into a world he had only glimpsed from afar. But now, standing before the daunting front desk, surrounded by people who seemed so effortlessly at ease, doubt crept in. What if he didn't belong here? What if they saw through him, an imposter masquerading as a professional? Gathering his courage, James took a step forward and approached the polished front desk where a bellhop stood, impeccably dressed, a radiant smile stretching across his face. The bellhop looked up, his expression friendly and eager. "Excuse me," James said, his voice catching slightly in his throat. The bellhop's response came smoothly, and that one word hit James like an electric shock. It seemed small, but it resonated deeply within him, sparking something long forgotten buried beneath years of self-doubt. "Sir." Suddenly, he was no longer just James from the bookstore. In that moment, he was someone worth acknowledging, someone deserving of respect. "Yes, the Riverton Conference Center," he confirmed, the warmth of the bellhop's word filling him with an unexpected surge of confidence. "Just head down this hallway, take a left, and the elevators will be right there. Press the button for the second floor and you'll find exactly what you need," the bellhop said, gesturing with an inviting nod. "Thank you," James replied, feeling a mixture of gratitude and disbelief. As he walked away, the word "sir" echoed in his mind, stirring something vibrant inside him. He had asked for directions, but he had received so much more, a reminder that he could claim his place in this new world. Stepping into the elevator, James grasped the railing tightly, willing himself to breathe. The doors closed with a soft click, boxing him in with his swirling thoughts. What if he embarrassed himself? What if he couldn't think straight? Each floor felt like a countdown to a life-altering moment, and with each passing ding, his anxiety tightened its grip. Finally, the door slid open, and he emerged into a long corridor lined with elegant artwork hanging on the walls. Each step felt heavier as he moved toward the conference room, a pivotal space where he hoped to shed his previous identity. As the hollow echoes of his footsteps filled the air, he caught a glimpse of himself in a polished surface. For a moment, he barely recognized the man staring back at him. Could he really pull this off? When he reached the conference room door, he paused. The sounds of laughter and chatter crashed over him like rising waves. Before he could second-guess himself, he pushed the door open, and a burst of conversation washed over him. The lively room was filled with professionals, their faces lighting up as they turned to see who had entered. "James," a voice rang out. It was Rachel, a close friend from college, and her warm presence instantly wrapped around him like a comforting blanket. "Rachel," he exclaimed, relief flooding his system. "I'm here to support you. Everyone's excited to meet you," she said, ushering him further into the room. As he stepped inside, he felt the collective gaze of curious eyes settle on him. It was overwhelming and electrifying all at once. Rachel's enthusiasm was infectious. "This is James," she announced, her voice ringing with pride. James blinked, his cheeks burning at the unexpected attention. Incredible ideas, the weight of that phrase hung in the air as applause broke out. All at once, he felt both exposed and validated. His heart raced, a hot rush of adrenaline coursed through him. As the meeting began, every face became a canvas of curiosity and skepticism. James struggled to calm himself, aware that the stakes felt higher than they did back in the comfort of his bookstore. He felt utterly out of place as experts shared theories and strategies that soared over his head. How had he convinced himself he could come and be part of this world? Just when his anxiety threatened to swallow him whole, Rachel caught his eye and nodded encouragingly. Suddenly he felt it, an ember of desire smoldering inside him. He was here after all. He had a seat at this table, and it was time to prove to himself that he deserved to be there. In that moment, something ignited within him. With a deep breath, he found his voice. "I think we should look at emerging trends rather than just cutting costs. There's potential and innovation that could bring us unexpected growth," he said, each word spilling out with newfound determination. The room fell silent for a heartbeat, then began to ripple with reaction. Heads nodded, eyes started to sparkle with understanding, and conversations sparked around him. He felt the change in the air, the way his words landed softly yet powerfully. This wasn't just sharing ideas, it was forming connections. James listened, engaged, and before he realized it, he was no longer hesitant. He joined in, throwing out more thoughts and examples, weaving personal anecdotes into the tapestry of their discussions. The energy shifted, pulling him into a current of collective creativity. Someone in the back called, excitement in their tone. Each time someone echoed his thoughts, he felt his confidence grow. This was no longer just a meeting. It was evolving into a conversation that invited him to be part of something bigger. As each idea gelled and fused into the dialogue, he felt an exhilarating sense of freedom from the confines of his old self. "Let's dive deeper into that," another voice chimed in, and with each question, James felt a rush of adrenaline pulling him forward. As discussions swirled and ideas flowed, he no longer felt like the clerk he once was. He started transforming into the person he had always envisioned: knowledgeable, confident, and capable. He was a contributor, and with every nod, every smile from his peers, he absorbed the validation like sunlight breaking through a long storm. Then the head of the meeting turned to him, her expression firm yet warm. "James, your insights have been invaluable today." His breath caught. He asked, unable to mask the overwhelming surprise. "Absolutely. We need fresh perspectives, and I believe you can provide that," she said, extending her hand. As they shook hands, a rush of invincible excitement surged through him. The doubts that had once overshadowed his aspirations shattered like fragile glass. Today he wasn't just James, he was James, an integral part of a team, a professional with dreams and ideas worth exploring. When the meeting concluded, an excited buzz filled the air. People began to share exuberant comments, laughter circling the room like a warm breeze. Rachel sidled up to him, her pride palpable. "You did it." "I can't believe it," he said, still riding the high of validation. "Of course they do. You've always had it in you. You just needed this moment to shine," she said, her faith in him igniting a spark within. As everyone began to mingle, the atmosphere shifted to one of celebration. Laughter rang out and glasses clinked together in joyous camaraderie. Despite the earlier nerves that had gripped him, James now felt light and buoyant. He was no longer the man frozen by doubt. He was free to engage, to connect. Rachel said, her eyes gleaming with enthusiasm. He replied, excitement bubbling up and weaving through his veins. As they made their way to the rooftop, the enticing fragrance of city streets filled his lungs, blending with the electric energy that surged around them. Reaching the rooftop, they were greeted with an expansive view of the cityscape stretched out beneath them. The horizon glowed with lights shimmering like stars, and the air was filled with music and laughter. Platform umbrellas danced in the wind, creating an ambience of freedom and joy. Rachel called, raising her glass high. He echoed back, his heart swelling as he lifted his own drink. The sound of clinking glasses resonated in synchronicity, a celebration of new beginnings. As the night wore on, the atmosphere became electrifying. Conversations flowed fluidly, punctuated by laughter. Each story shared felt like a thread, weaving them closer together. James marveled at how easily he connected with new people, as if the barriers that had once confined him had at last crumbled. In the midst of this whirlwind of connection, James spotted the bellhop standing off to the side, watching the festivities unfold. The memories of that earlier encounter surged within him, a small act, yet it had transformed everything. He felt a need to express his gratitude one more time. He approached the bellhop, a genuine smile breaking across his face. "I just wanted to thank you again for your kind words earlier." The bellhop's expression brightened and surprise washed over him. "Really, I'm glad to hear that. Absolutely. That single moment changed everything for me," James replied, feeling the connection. With that, James walked away refreshed, re-immersed in the vibrant energy of the gathering. He realized that this evening had become more than just a meeting or a celebration. It was a pivotal moment in his life, a transformation ignited by a simple act of respect that had catapulted him towards something extraordinary. As laughter and music swirled around him, James took a deep breath. He had stepped into this world of professionals that morning, afraid and hesitant, but now he understood that he was no longer defined by the past. He was forging a new path, a story unfolding in real time. Underneath the glow of city lights and the promise of future opportunities, he felt uplifted, ready to embrace every moment. No longer just a small-town clerk, no longer hiding behind doubts, James was stepping into his truth. With each connection made and every word exchanged, he came to an important realization. Sometimes all you need is for someone to acknowledge your worth. And sometimes those words can change everything. It wasn't just about finding directions, it was about finding himself, and he was finally on his way. He paused just outside the Grand Hotel lobby, his heart racing as he took in the towering chandeliers overhead and the thick plush carpets underfoot. Guests sauntered by in tailored suits and lavish dresses, their laughter ringing like music in the air. James felt like a miniature version of himself, dwarfed by the opulence that surrounded him. Would he really fit in here? Just that morning, he'd been up early, working the register at the small-town bookstore, ringing up customers with familiar faces and friendly smiles. Now he was in a world that felt galaxies away, on a quest to find his footing in an unfamiliar city. This meeting could change everything for him, a step out of his old life and into something bigger, and yet the weight of uncertainty pressed heavily on his shoulders. With a deep breath, he pushed through the lobby doors and swam into the sea of luxury. He felt like a fly in a glass jar, buzzing frantically against the walls, desperately searching for a way out. But today, of all days, he refused to retreat. He was determined to take the plunge. He spotted the front desk, its polished wood gleaming under the soft lights. A bellhop stood nearby, impeccably dressed, his uniform crisp and sharp. James hesitated for just a moment, nerves creeping up as he approached. "Excuse me," James said, his voice faltering slightly. The bellhop's response was sharp, confident, and that one word ****** stopped James in his tracks. It sent a shockwave through him, igniting something deep within. No one called him that anymore. In that instant, he was no longer just a clerk in a dusty bookstore. He was seen. "Yes, the Riverton Conference Center," he managed to reply, feeling a rush of unexpected warmth and power wash over him. "Of course, sir. Just walk down this hallway, take a left, and you'll see the elevators at the end. Press the button for the second floor and you'll find it," the bellhop added, his smile reassuring. "Thank you," James said, the sincerity bubbling up inside him. As he turned to walk away, the word Sir Asterisk echoed in his mind, filling him with newfound courage. Could a simple term hold so much weight? It felt like a door had creaked open, inviting him to step into a version of himself he had long forgotten. Stepped into the elevator, gripping the rail as if it were a lifeline. Inside, he was alone with his thoughts. What if he wasn't good enough? What if they laughed at him? The minutes ticked by with painful slowness, but there was something more now, a flicker of hope combating the shadows of self-doubt. With a ding, the door slid open to reveal a long hallway adorned with modern art, vibrant paintings that seemed to pulse with life. He walked cautiously toward the conference room, feeling both exhilarated and terrified. Each step echoed his internal struggle, a battle between the man he had been and the man he wanted to become. As he reached the door, he paused to collect himself, taking a deep breath. He pushed it open and stepped inside, where a wave of warm conversation hit him. Eyes turned in his direction, and suddenly he felt like an unexpected guest crashing a party. "James," Rachel, a friend from college, called out. Her voice cut through the muffled noise like a beacon of light. Relief washed over him as he made his way toward her. "Rachel," he exclaimed, grateful for her familiar face. "I came to support you." She smiled widely, encouraging him further into the room. As he stepped inside, he felt the energy shift. The room was filled with professionals, their conversations mixing in harmonious chaos. James felt like an outsider peeking into a world he desperately wanted to enter. Rachel announced, and the room quieted, shifting their attention to him. James felt heat rush to his face as a mix of anxiety and excitement surged within him. Suddenly, he was at the center of attention, and applause erupted around him. It was a tidal wave of recognition that both exhilarated and terrified him. The head of the meeting, a charismatic executive with an engaging presence, smiled warmly. "Welcome, James. We're thrilled to have you here." The pressure mounted, and for a split second, his mind blanked, but Rachel's encouraging smile cut through the fog. In that moment, fueled by an unexpected rush, he knew he couldn't back down. He had to speak. He started, feeling the confidence slowly creep in. "We should look at emerging market trends rather than just focusing on reducing costs." The room hung onto his words, their expressions shifting from mild curiosity to genuine interest. A collective nod surged through the crowd. Someone chimed in. As the discussions deepened, James felt a shift occur within him. It was like a wave crashing over him, washing away the fear and doubts he had carried into the room. The more he spoke, the more he felt like he belonged. Ideas flowed like water, and he realized that his voice mattered. With each spark of enthusiasm ignited by his contributions, the room stimulated lively discussions, turning to him for insights. Laughter rang out and heads nodded in agreement. Then another voice cut in. "James, you have such unique ideas." His heart raced, disbelief washing over him. "Really?" The words tumbled from his mouth, sounding surreal. "Absolutely," the executive replied. "We want your perspective." In that instant, everything shifted. The world around him blurred as clarity settled in. He gripped the executive's hand, feeling the weight of that handshake. It was more than a formality, it was a connection, an acknowledgement of the journey he had taken to arrive at this moment. With the meeting concluding and warm applause echoing in his ears, James felt weightless. People began to mingle, the atmosphere transforming into one of celebration. Rachel beamed at him, her pride shining like a beacon. "You did it," she exclaimed, pulling him into a hug. He said, astonishment mingling with joy. "Of course," Rachel insisted, overflowing with excitement. As the group began to merge into a wider celebration, laughter and clinking glasses bounced off the walls in joyful resonance. James felt lighter, as if he was finally shedding layers of self-doubt. Here in this shimmering moment he belonged. Rachel called, her eyes sparkling. He replied, buoyed by the thrill of the night. Together they stepped out into the urban buzz, the sounds of the city filling his senses. On the rooftop, a kaleidoscope of lights flickered below as the city pulsed to life. The air was charged, vibrant with music and laughter. Together they raised their glasses high, and he felt the warmth of camaraderie flood his chest. Rachel declared, her voice ringing out. James echoed, lifting his glass. The sound of their voices meshed with laughter, a celebration of hopes and dreams mingling in the night. Yet deep inside, the shadow of self-doubt lingered, whispering fears that threatened to dim the light of his accomplishments. What if this was just a fluke? What if they found out he wasn't worthy? But as he gazed out at the sprawling city below, he steeled himself. This was his moment, and he wouldn't let fear take it away from him. The night unfurled around him, and conversations became a symphony of laughter and shared dreams. He felt the energy wrapping around him, lifting him higher, and in that warmth, he realized the power of connection. He was no longer alone in this wild journey of life. Then, as the night carried on, a familiar figure caught his eye. It was the bellhop from earlier, standing at the edge of the bar, observing the jubilant scene. A wave of gratitude washed over James, and he couldn't resist. This was the man who had ignited his journey. James made his way over, gratitude bubbling inside him. He called. The bellhop turned, surprise lighting up his features when he recognized James. "I just wanted to thank you for your earlier words. When you called me sir, it unlocked something in me. It made a difference," he confessed, sincerity lacing his voice. The bellhop smiled, a knowing glimmer in his eyes. "Really, I'm glad to hear that, and you gave me that nudge," James replied, feeling the connection solidify. But just as they exchanged knowing smiles, everything froze for a heartbeat. The laughter faded, the vibrant energy around him diminished. The bellhop's expression changed, a shadow crossing over his face. His gaze drifted past James, turning serious. "James," he said slowly, "there's something I need to tell you." Before he could process the weight of those words, a sudden commotion erupted behind them. A loud crash, followed by panicked shouts, broke through the moment. In an instant, the vibrant energy shifted into chaos, swirling around them like a storm. James felt his heart drop. What was happening? He turned back to the bellhop, but his expression hung in uncertainty. An undeniable tension crackled in the era, dramatic turning point that no one had seen coming. As the confusion escalated, he could only hope that whatever revelation the bellhop had to share wouldn't be left unsaid. The night was unraveling quickly, and as chaos erupted, James couldn't shake the feeling that his journey was about to shift once more. The stakes were rising, and he stood on the edge of something significant, waiting to find out what lay ahead.